down below the road. That was Dr. Rose's hospital. And then on the front of where the old hospital was built, on the lawn down in front, you know, there's a terrace down about 6 feet. That was where the wooden hospital was.
Oh, really?
This is you might go around the hospital corner. That wall was only 40 feet away from the original building.
Okay, here's the,
and they built the
right here, eh?
Yeah.
That was the wooden hospital.
Eh?
Wooden hospital. Here's that road.
That's
the wooden hospital is here.
Yeah, and then they built the octagonal one up here, right behind it.
Right. Okay. View. And then down here where the nurse's home was, and is now the apartments that old what's his name owns, that was Dr. Rose's?
No.
Oh.
No, wait a minute here.
Oh.
Down below the road here.
Oh, down here.
That big building is 3 suites.
Yeah.
That goes from Front Street up to High Street.
Right. That was a hospital?
That was Dr. Rose's hospital. That square building with a big roof that flares out 4 feet away.
Roy Olson owned that.
Eh?
Roy Olson owned that. And it's store apartments now.
Oh, did Olson own that?
Yeah. Because my friend Jill just is looking after it now.
Right along High Street, beyond that is where high school teacher. The same contractor built this house and the one further along this way.
Oh, Evans.
Eldred
Same house, isn't it?
Eldred Evans' house.
Yeah.
Same roof as this.
Yeah.
He built the both.
Same contractor.
This one is 3 stories deep down to Front Street.
Yep.
But that was Dr. Rose's hospital.
Wow.
He was the first main surgeon in the hospital. Come around the corner, off of Vernon Street.
Yep.
Cedar Street goes right down, split, and the other side comes around the corner, over to Park Street.
Right. Here's the upper one.
Yeah, that's the upper.
And the lower.
And then there's a lower that goes down this way.
Right, with the big rock wall.
That's the rock wall.
Okay, now.
Well, the house is on the north side of the alleyway. As you come around this corner, you come to the alley here.
Okay. Yeah. So Mrs. Callowell's old house.
Mrs. Callowell lived in that was the Hannah house. Her name is Elma Hannah.
She's the Hannah, right. Okay.
But then the
there was the alley.
The McLean house is on this lot. That one with the circular front porch.
Oh, where Mrs. Poole lives.
Eh?
Where Grace Poole lives.
I don't know.
It's got a big, it's got a kind of a
fancy pipe across the front.
Yeah, with a kind of like looks like a wheel from a boat up in the top of it. It's right on the.
Well, it's a 1-story place.
Yeah, like a big cottage. Yeah.
Yeah, with the porch around 3 sides of it.
Okay, and then the next one was Dill's?
That's right. They had 2 houses.
Yeah.
Dill's, the first one was the George Hunter house.
Oh, really?
And Reg Dill married Lillian Hunter. That's how they inherited that house, and then they bought the next one to it.
Oh, I see. Okay.
There's another one in here called the Palethorpe house.
Oh, that was Georgia?
That was the Palethorpe house. Then the one on the corner up here was George Palethorpe owned that. I don't know whether he still does or not, but I forget the name of the original on that house. Then you're coming down Park Street.
And Dill's owned this one too.
Yeah, they own 2 of them in there.
Well, did George Palethorpe come from Nelson? Like I don't
know where they came from. He was an early forest ranger, you know. He's alive,
Yeah, I know.
90.
He comes to the museum. He can't hear at all, though.
Not a damn thing, and he can't get used to a hearing aid of any kind.
It really bothers him a lot. I see. Oh, that's good to know. Okay, McLean Bottling Works. How's that? Okay. Feel good about it? Okay.
Ready to roll when you are.
Okay. Well,
story of this, but, you know, the story of the hospital and what happened to it, it is worth recounting.
So let's tell it now. After we're finished, I'll write a note that we'll ask it. Okay, he's going to start the tape, so I'm just going to ask you a couple of personal questions to start the tape, okay? So, okay? I'm talking to Mr. George Lambert at his home on the North Shore. I'd like to ask you how long were you born in Nelson?
I was born in Rossland
Yes.
in 1902, and I was 6 months old when the family moved back to not here, but to Weimar, and then Weimar into Nelson. And I've lived in Nelson since 1903.
Almost consecutively all the time you've lived here, all those years.
Except for, I went away to university and I've been in different other places for short lengths of time, but mainly here, and not on the North Shore, of course.
No. And your father came from?
Ontario.
To the Kootenai?
Yeah.
And when did he come?
The fall of 1896.
And he came to
And
Rossland?
he came to, first, I'm not just sure which way it happened, but he worked part of a year or a length of time at Moyer, and then at Caslo, 1897, he was a carpenter. And then Spokane City. But after traveling kind of a triangle working a couple of years, he decided geographically Nelson was going to be the center due to the fact that it has two roads north, essentially, one south, one east, and one west. It was the center. And he knew it was going to be a wholesale distribution center. So he said, if I'm going to stay in the Kootenays at all, I better stay in the middle. And he got, in the first year he was in Nelson, about 1899, I guess. He and a group, including his brother, got
Better get your father's name and
Alexander George.
Alexander George. And his brother?
His brother was Thomas Whaling Lambert. And he lived in Ontario. He didn't come out to this country until he was widower, and what the heck time was it? He came out here about in the 60s. No, wait a minute. He came out. Wait a second now. Tom came out here and was here in 1934 when we started Lambert Lumber Limited. Well, 1930 or 31 he came out. His wife died and my dad wanted him to come out, so he worked with my dad's company and me. He was in his 60s, but
well, let's go back to your dad.
Dad went. He went into a syndicate, or helped form a syndicate that of about 5 or 6 of them that owned the Joker mine up the South Fork of Sproule Creek.
Sure.
And they sold that. My dad had an eighth, my uncle had a quarter, a man by the name of Taylor had a half, and somebody else had another portion of the syndicate. Dad made $8,000. They sold the mine for 65 or so thousand to an Eastern outfit, a French company really, right from France. And Dad made $8,000 out of that, and Tom made 16. And started that in the lumber business. That's how he started with John Bell. He first started as the bookkeeper and secretary of the Puerto Rico Lumber Company at Weimar. That's why when they closed their retail outlets, the Puerto Rico did, in Rossland, so Dad came back into Weimar, to the head office. Well, then he ended up by buying their Nelson location, which was right where the Super Value is, across the street from the Civic Center.
Oh, really? Okay.
And I'll show you a picture of it.
Yeah.
And he bought the retail outlet of the Puerto Rico Lumber Company, and then they got their original lumber from the Puerto Rico mill at Weimar. And then, full of more ambition, he wanted to start his own production end of the lumber business.
Not just the
So
retail.
he had to find, he was a carpenter and a bookkeeper, so he had to find a mill builder. So John Bell was a mill builder. He wasn't in the Star Grocery at that time. He bought that finally, and his sons ran it. But he was original a sawmill man. And he and Dad formed A.G. Lambert and Company, not Limited. And they started in at Taggam and up Sproule Creek.
Was that the mill on the foreshore there at Taggam on the opposite side of the river? No. Where were they?
The lumber yard, the wholesale yard, and the planing plant was between the road by that brick house that goes up the hill.
Mm-hmm.
From there, along the railroad, a long strip, over to a little cabin with 2 or 3 rooms at the far end of it, probably a quarter of a mile of length. And the lumber, or the logging and sawmill operation was up Sproule Creek. They operated from 1905 to 1933 in that one area. There was 7 sawmills built up Sproule Creek.
Ooh.
Yeah. The first one 1.5 miles up, and the last one in the main fork was 8 miles up. That's the one I worked in. Then it was all cut out in the main fork, and then they had 2 different mill sites in the north fork. So that's how he got started in the lumber production end of the business.
And they
That
had
was
a siding.
1905,
There was a siding there right beside the planing mill for the railroad. So he had a
Yeah,
good location.
there was a full-length siding
Right.
in.
But how did everybody else bring their wood down? By wagons? By loaded wagons? The other
Everything
mills.
that came to that planing plant site
Right.
came down from Sproule Creek from the sawmill by flume.
Oh, of course. Of course.
And came down over the hill and around the corner to the slide-off table,
Right.
and that was water from Sproule Creek.
Right. Of course.
And made flumes as high as 40,000 feet in a 9-hour shift from a mill 8 miles up. Now the lumber was moving in that flume, and it took 2 different sorting gaps, or 3, that were manned by 2 Chinamen, where in the floating of lumber in a flume, the friction of the bottom of the flume holds the water back as it flows, and the top of the water falls ahead, so it becomes waves down the flume.
Yeah.
And it's when the water gets a little low in the flume, the waves just don't float the lumber. So it had to be fed 6 times in that 8 miles from the creek,
Right.
because lots of got thrown out by the lumber itself, and the flume was 14-inch sides, 45-degree slope, and a 12-inch bottom, and then running full of water will float a big chunk of stuff, 2x12s, 3x12s, square timber, and so on. But you gotta have water to run it, and it was in an 8-hour or 9-hour period. We have taken the whole cut of the sawmill plus 10 or 15,000 feet of lumber from the lumber piles that were alongside the flume, cut the fall before. It had to be done in the fluming had to be done in the spring.
High water.
High water.
Right. I was going to say, what happened in August when the water lake was so low?
We saw it from the 1st of April till the 1st of July. Because there wasn't enough water at the headworks up at the top end to flume lumber after the 1st of July.
So as soon as you could get into the bush, you were up there starting lumber coming down.
It was a tricky operation to operate, and it was so successful that it's the one and only in BC. I don't think there's ever an operation exactly like it. Because we only had about a mile of log flume above the logging operation above the mill. The way it started, you see, they start with a mill at the bottom of the valley. That's a mile and a half up from Taggart. They logged up the creek as far as it's economically sound, and then they moved the mill up further, close to the timber, and start over again, and they finally, in 5 settings, get to the top, to where there's no more timber. When you start down the other side, which goes into the Slocan Valley down Beaver Creek.
In those days, did you have timber licenses like you do now? Did your father have to apply to the provincial government to get right to cut and pay stumpage and all that?
I spent the afternoon with John Cuthbert down in the Forest Service. He has a whole flock of old photographs that nobody has. He found them in the office when he took on the job. And I told him, I said, you guard these damn things with your heart, because I want you to come up to the house and spend a whole evening with me going through them. Sawmills and operations all over this part of the country that I know the origins of, and with the help of one other person that's in town that's older than I am, but was a logger, not a lumberman. He worked in a lot of he went during a season from one job to another around maybe 3 or 4 sawmills or logging operations. So he saw things that I never did bother to see. All my lumber experience centers on my dad's operation, Sproule Creek, and then what I did after he died, and in the wholesale lumber business, selling our product, producing it and selling it to Eastern interests, to a big firm in Burlington, Ontario that was behind us financially and paid for the expansion of our operation from scratch up at Caswell. That was only a 10-year period out of my working life. I started as a kid, 14 years old, down at Taggam in the summer holidays, learning how to tail a planer and grade lumber. A big Sikh Hindu, 6 foot something in height, with a purple turban and a big fancy stone in the front of it, and his beard all
braided
right to his ears, taught me the first I knew about grading lumber, and he was an expert, a real good one. And
well, can we go just back to you just for a minute, because you're now 14. I should ask you, your mom came from around here? Your father met her here?
Mother and Dad met. Mother came out in 1899, and Dad Dad and Mother met mainly through the Methodist Church. Dad was originally a Presbyterian, but he met Mother, who was a Methodist, in 1899, and they were married in 1900.
What was her name?
Ianthea May Bush.
Ianthea.
Ianthea.
How do you spell that?
Ianthia.
Ah, okay. May,
I
M-A-E or M-A-Y?
Well, I guess it was M-A-Y, but
Bush, okay.
it graduated into.
So where did she come from?
She came from a place on the St. Lawrence River near Ottawa called Altsville.
Altsville.
Aultsville. It was a town that was wiped out along with another adjoining town and now is replaced by one town out of the two called Iroquois.
Okay. And why did she come here?
She came here to her sister, who was Mrs. J.A. Irving. He was an early grocer. Mm-hmm. She came out to visit Aunt Lydia. Her name was Lydia.
We have a picture of her in the museum.
And it?
Lydia Irving.
Good.
Yeah.
And so Mother, in that 6-month period, she stayed visiting Lydia.
Right.
She met my dad. And subsequently, in 1902, I was born.
So they were married in the Methodist Church in
They
Nelson?
were married in the Methodist Church in the wooden church that was there before the stone was,
Right. Okay.
stone was built.
Okay. That's Trinity.
On that same
That's
corner.
Trinity Church now.
Yeah, Trinity.
Right. Yeah.
You say St. Paul's was Presbyterian.
Yeah.
Trinity Methodist.
Yeah.
And then it became St. Paul's Trinity when the amalgamation of the three
Yeah, the church.
congregational and the other and part of the Presbyterian went together in 1925.
Right. And just to complete this biographical bit, do you have brothers and sisters, or were you the only child?
All of the Lambert children are alive yet.
Oh wow!
And I'm the eldest. My brother Arthur Alexander, lives at Bonaventure Park.
Oh, okay.
He retired, I think, 13 years ago from general manager of the West Kootenai Power and Light.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah.
Next to him in the family is my sister, a widow, Mrs. Gladys Swanson in North Vancouver. Her husband, when he retired, was wire chief to the CPR in the Lower Mainland. The next in the family is T.C. Buck Lambert, Lambert
your brother.
Realty.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay.
And the next one is James C. Bell.
Jean.
James.
Jean.
J-A-M.
C. Bell.
Lives in Blaylock Estates
Right.
condominium. Her husband was Dave Bell, who died 3 years ago, but he retired as superintendent of all the Cominco plants on the river, the whole works, clear to Juanita.
Okay.
He worked under my brother Art.
Okay, so that's everybody? You were 5.
There's 5 of us in the family, and we're all alive
You're all
yet.
still alive. Isn't that wonderful?
And we're the only one of us with our mate yet, and that's
Yeah.
Buck.
Yeah, that is. Okay, so let's go back now. So you had your schooling in Nelson and
We started in the
your
century.
family home. Where was your family home? I gotta get that too.
Well, it was 3 different places since I was born.
Oh, okay.
But one on Silica Street and one that Dad built on Cedar Street just up off of Victoria. But in 1912, he bought a property in Fairview on the corner of 2nd and Elwyn, where that strata title condominium building is.
Oh, that was your house.
That big yellow house
Yeah.
that
They burned it down.
Jeffries. Yeah, they burned it down. That was vandalism. 20,000 feet of lumber went up in smoke.
We lived in the old Tregellis house when that was burning. When they burned the house down, we were living in the Tregellis house.
Were you?
Yeah. That was terrible.
That was criminal.
Yeah, it was. It was terrible.
Because Yassick and his boy, Frank Yassick, were in the business of taking it down to build cabins on this side of the lake. Because he bought the Johnson property,
right.
From Alla Ferguson.
Right.
And the owner of the property, what's his name?
Jeffrey?
No. Jeffrey sold it to
William?
he's in with RHC. Ran his own.
Gerald?
Polak, no.
Uh-huh.
You know him, I've played enough bridge lots of them. Tall. Anyway, he told Yassick, you gotta, whatever you're gonna do, about Tuesday, he said that whatever you're gonna do, you better do it because the fire department's gonna burn this building down on Friday night. He said, shucks, look at the 10,000 feet of lumber we haven't got yet. Never mind, it's gotta come down. So they lit it on fire, and it was the biggest bonfire that ever was seen in Fairview. It was the biggest and the most expensive house in Fairview. In 1912, that house cost Dad $7,600.
That was a nice
Which today is
a lot of money.
a darn sight more, $100,000 home.
Right.
And they just destroyed it. And then the place sat idle for 3 years or more.
No.
Didn't do a thing with it.
No, they just left it.
Well, it was, what the hell is his name? His real estate office was up behind in the building that Johnson bought.
Kaliniuk?
Kaliniuk.
Yeah, Kaliniuk. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Son of a gun.
Okay.
Anyway.
Georgia Street, Cedar Rock, Victoria, 2nd and Elwyn Street from 1912 on.
Yeah.
That was just
And then we sold that after Dad died in 1942. We sold that in 1943 or 4. And Mother died in 1945.
Okay.
She died 3 years after Dad.
Did you go to hymn school? The little
We
school
went
that
to
was in there?
we went to the wooden hewn school that was in front of the present school.
Right. The little 4-room.
It's a 4-room school, and after they tore it down, they took one room up around the corner, up to the corner of Third,
gym or whatever.
and they made it a badminton hall.
Right. Okay, and then you went to Nelson High School. I guess.
Nelson High School. Yeah.
And what university did you go to?
She's a part Burmese and very talkative.
Yeah, she's a little hoarse right now.
Yeah, well, she's getting old. She's 14 years old.
Well,
But she tells you.
Does she want to go out or she wants something to drink?
No, she just
Talking
wants
to you.
She just wants to get acquainted with you.
Okay.
She's very friendly toward men. She's a
Man, cat.
well, she's a kind of an Elizabeth Taylor, I guess.
Oh.
You know,
Okay, let's just finish.
or a Zazu Gabor, or
Right.
you know.
And then you went to university for?
I went only for 1 year, but my brother
Where did you go
went
to?
for 4 and graduated as a civil engineer.
Where did you go?
I came back and went into the lumber business.
No, but where
with
did
Daddy
you go to school?
in UBC.
Oh, okay. So let's go back to when you were 14. And you're working for your dad out in
Well,
Texas.
that was when I was in our summer holidays.
Yeah.
We worked out there,
Worked for your dad.
and that was to earn money toward our keep the next winter. And by the time we went to university, Art and I had enough money in the bank accumulated out of the previous 3 or 4 years of working a month or 6 weeks in the summer holidays, enough to finance our first year in university.
Okay, now you mentioned this Sikh gentleman. You mentioned this Sikh
Well,
gentleman.
there was about
Tell me about some of the things that worked for you, Dad. Like,
well, there was a when I was in my teens, there was a group of about 6 or 7 Hindus from the coast, all Sikhs, that were lumber pilers and lumber yard workers. They came from mainly Vancouver Island. They came up and they had piling contracts, so much 1,000, and they worked in teams. As I remember it, there was the company had 3 houses or 4 up on the first bench at Tagan, on the level of not where the road goes now, but about 100 feet higher up. Anyway, at the first farms, and there's a new house in there on that same property. They had 3 or 4 buildings in there that were for the crew, and the Hindus had one building. They did their own cooking and ran their own show. There was another that was used as a sleeping quarters, and then there was the other that was the cookhouse and dining hall for the crew. Because in those days there was a lot of single men on the road, same as there were loggers. Everybody carried his own blankets, and they had to have a bed and a place to operate from, and there was a Chinese cook in charge of that, and there was probably 20 men worked down in the lumber yard. This was in the days when the Duke-Boys hadn't got into the labor market. There was a few of the younger ones, same age as I was. 2 lads, one named Pete Popoff, and another one by the name of Conkin, that worked there when they were about 16 or 17, when I was the same age. But there were, the others were returned soldiers from the first war. I was 45 years old, and this Sikh crew, and a few, probably 4 or 5 Duke-Boys, younger fellows that perhaps weren't married or maybe 25 years old. And the Duke-Boys then owned the farm right across from the planing mill on the other side of the track, and that was a farm that's all flooded now. The early Williams siding was the name, the post office name of that. The CPR, it was Tagan siding. But
the post office.
the post office was in the hands of a postmaster, a man by the name of Williams. It was Williams siding. And he owned the land, the farm. He sold it to the Duke-Boy community, who used the house and built a big red barn and ran a farm there. Mainly garden vegetables and just a regular farm. They had a cow, and they never ate meat. They liked butter and milk. So
Did your father spend his days at the mill and come and go from?
No, he always had a retail yard and the main office in town.
And he had a manager out at the mill.
Well,
or a foreman.
planer foreman who ran the whole show there.
You remember who that was?
Yeah, W.R. Blanchard.
Blanchard.
W.R. Blanchard, Palethorpe's father-in-law.
Oh, really? That's interesting. I see. Okay. And did he live out there with the men?
Only during the week he had his own cabin, But his family was in town here, but he was out there for 5 days of the week, and in Saturday and Sunday.
Yeah.
And
How about the men? Did they come in on the weekends too? Of course, there wasn't a working, was it 5-day week? Was working a
we worked a 6-day
Yeah.
week, and then a 5.5.
Yeah.
Finally, in the end, a 5-day week. But our first operation at Castle in 1943 was a 5.5-day week. We worked till noon on
Yeah, I
Saturday.
remember everybody used to work when I was a girl till noon on Saturday. I can remember that. Yeah. Okay.
And it was
So, your father had this whole tag-em operation happening by 1910 or by 1905?
oh yeah, it moved. See, in 1913, John Bell wanted to get out of the business because it had got to the stage where it wasn't mill building. John Bell was a mill builder. He wasn't interested in the routine business of sawing lumber and the monotony of operation. He was a builder. And I have some of that same proclivity in me.
Yeah.
The monotony of doing one thing day after day drives me up the wall. I can't stand it. I gotta have a job that changes every 15 minutes or more.
Yes.
And I've always been that way. My dad must have been that way because he showed it in his business. And he never was satisfied to discontinue doing things at the same level. It either had to get bigger or else change in some respects. So he developed the tag-em operation to the point where it was 50 men in the sawmill and the woods operation, another 20 down at the tagging end of it, which is probably a total, along with the lumber yard in town, of 5 or 6 or 7. It was something like 75 men on the payroll, total.
This is
With a secretary in the office and a bookkeeper, and he was the general manager and the president. And was always on the prod looking for either timber or more horses or something. That's how I got mixed into it early, because at about 12 years old, he'd say on a Sunday morning or a Saturday night, he said, I'm getting a team or a horse and buggy or a horse and cutter, and I'm going out here or there or some other place around. I want to look at a team of horses or a horse or something. Or I want to go and talk to somebody. So he took me with him. And from the time I was 12 years old, he talked to me as if I was growing up. And by the time I was 17, I was running a 7-man crew, grading lumber and unloading 500,000 feet of stuff that came from Crescent Valley. Because he never gave me an order to go and do something. He would start in kind of cornerways on me and say, I think you're going to have to change your job. And I said, what for? And he said, well, here we have a problem. And I don't know who to put in charge of it. I know you could do it. But he said, not quite old enough, but I know you could do it.
The challenge to him,
he kept running the fence around me, and then he started to pull the shirt string tight until he finally said, you're going to start Monday doing this and that. And I would say, I don't know anything about it. Well, he said, you'll learn. And he said, we'll have to suffer with the mistakes, but you'll learn. And we'll see how you make out after a day or two. If you fail on it, we'll have to put somebody else in charge, but I don't think you will. You better not.
Yeah, right.
You know? You know, it's kind of a friendly persuasion approach that had a big hammer in the middle of it.
Right. Well,
But he didn't just suddenly say out of the blue,
what did it?
go and do something on Saturday morning different from what you've done all for 6 months. He did that in the sawmill. I'd be on one job and he'd say, you gotta put somebody on another job in the mill. I can get anybody to put on it. But I got somebody to put in your place on the job you're doing. Well, I don't know what the other job is. Well, that's all right. You'll do it. So from one job, I went to 9 jobs out of 13 in the
You learned
summer.
the whole
So I knew the whole darn works, you see.
Okay, maybe I should ask you a little bit about the equipment in the sawmill, in the Tagum operation. Where did he get his equipment, and what kind was it? Do you remember, or anything about? Was it steam operated or gasoline?
The first sawmill has a real history about it. The first sawmill that went up Sproule Creek, a mile and a half up from Tagum, came from Willow Point here. Some, I don't know who it was, owned it. It was probably capable of cutting about, maybe 15,000 feet of lumber a day. And it was a steam mill, steam boiler and steam engine, because there was no other power in those days. And it was near the lake shore, somewhere in Willow Point. And Dad made a deal with Captain Seaman of the Moyer at that time. After they come back from the Castle run, or the run they were on that day, to take a barge from Nelson and go up and push it against the beach up at Willow Point, and then they loaded all the machinery from this mill, which is prearranged down at the lake shore, loaded it all on the barge, took it down to the CPR wharf, which is on the other side of Lakeshore Drive, you know, behind the roundhouse, unloaded off that onto flat cars, and then out to Tagum, and then by horse methods up the creek. All the horse, 2 and 4 horse teams, pieces of time, and put it together.
Wow.
Build the framework, the whole mill frame, and put it into operation.
Mr. Bell got it all together so it would operate.
Well, Dad, I guess he must have been a little bit gregarious like I am, and he probably knew everybody that had anything to do with sawdust and slabs and lumber, carpenter minded. And he'd hunt around asking questions about where things would be and where they could get something or another. And I've been that way all my life. I never passed a piece of scrap iron that I could load in the car in my life. You know? And I had a scrap iron pile at Caslow in the 40s that was from here to length of this room and that high and 10 feet wide. Everything in it from a steam engine both ways that you could use in the back of the shop. And I started the same way as Dad did up in Sproule Creek. He didn't have a thing except an idea. I had the same thing at Caslow. I didn't have a doggone thing except a bare place on the beach. And I hunted for around amongst the neighbors up there for somebody with it was a big timber, about 8 by 16, lying on the beach, about 50 feet long. There's an old barge timber from the CPR, and I hunted up the guy that said he owned it. He salvaged it off the lake, and I said, I want to buy that from him. And then I hunted up a long piece of timber that was floating and platted it one side, and this was the other side of the mill, right at the beach, and started in building a sawmill. And I bought a whole sawmill plant down there Nelway. 7 truckloads of it came up, and in 6 months' time we had a sawmill, sawing lumber, and then 6 months later it burned down, lit on fire. Then I rebuilt it bigger, better, and ran it for 10 years. And it was more effort, using Japanese labor. 2 carloads of the lumber we produced in Caslow went on ships that rebuilt the shore destruction in the Bay of Naples, in the Mediterranean, when the Italian campaign blasted Naples to smithereens and then rebuilt it. Took 12 million feet of lumber to rebuild the harbor so it could be used again by us to win it.
Okay, that should go to your dad with the market. Where did he sell, and how did he sell and distribute his manufactured lumber?
It went to, I don't know how many wholesale lumber outfits that they accumulated as associates. In those days, Revelstoke Lumber, the Beaver Lumber, and half a dozen other wholesalers, as well as people like the Beaver Lumber Company, who had what they call line yards at each settlement where there was an elevator along the railroad. All the little towns across the prairie had a lumber yard. And Beaver Lumber and the Revelstoke were regular customers. Their buyer would come out with a whole set of needs for so many locations, and a carload would be sent to one place, like Lloydminster, Saskatchewan, and another one to Wetaskiwin, and another one to some other place. Carload of this, that, and the other, according to what they
all
needed.
that lumber, did it go up the Arrow Lakes, or did it go across on the barges across Kootenai Lakes?
All of our lumber went east in those days.
So it went to Proctor and
It went
onto
to
the barge.
Proctor, and then on the barge to Kootenai Landing, and then
on the train.
some of the outfits were Toronto, and some were Calgary, some were Winnipeg, headquarters of big companies. So they accumulated 8 or 10 or 12 big outlets. Well, then maybe in his operation he would get to the point where they got caught up on their orders, and they were starting to accumulate a certain size and grade of a product. It could be cedar, it could be spruce, it could be fir, larch, and hemlock, or yellow pine. There was a few yellow pines got mixed into it, and then he would buy stalks of lumber and mix in and tag them in the lumber yard there, because that was the wholesale end of it. Then he'd get on the phone and phone companies that he knew and say, we've got this, that, and the other.
Anybody interested?
And are you about ready to put out an order? This is what we can supply, or call me back, or give me a letter. Give us an order. What's the price price gonna be? Could they jockey price? Well, $3, the things got organized finally. The Intermountain, not Intermountain, but Interior Lumber Manufacturers Association,
Right.
whose office was in the animal bar, right where Rose's Delicatessen is, right in that corner. They had the secretary treasurer, and had regular meetings and arranged all the mills from here to Crow's Nest were in that association. And they set out the prices. And everybody was supposed to live according to the price for certain all grades and specifications. There's always crooks amongst them, you know. There was one guy by the name of Adolf. He was a Jew from over in the East Kootenai. He used to regularly undercut the price a couple of dollars, you know, the agreed price. And anyway, the ones he sold to had the list. Come out every month.
Right.
And he'd say, the buyer would say, well, you can't afford to pay the list. Well, that's what we want. Yes, but how much do you want to get rid of it, too? I'll give you $2 off list. That goes across the board, or whatever it is, you see. Well, for $1, $1.50 off list, you know, it was a barter.
Yeah.
It was a marketing business.
Yeah.
Same thing as you went into the store and the guy said, I want $35 for that suit, I'll give you 30. You know, same thing. It's the fun of doing business. But the operation up there continued about 3 million feet a year, plus what they bought on the outside from other mills. There was other smaller mills who had no market. Dad built up a wholesale, retail, and manufacturing lumber business. Now the letterhead you've got
Yeah, I was
there
gonna say, yeah.
shows manufacture and
Maybe we could put the letterhead on the
Hold it up.
video.
Because-
To find it.
funny as it may seem, I the other day found this envelope. Now,
Can we see it? Yeah. There.
yeah, you can see A.G. Lambert and Company and the diamond logo.
Right.
And this is the other one. This is the envelope that where have I got it? Here.
There.
There it is.
Okay.
I use the same one in our next company.
Uh-huh.
You see? This one here
So I have an envelope for the.
is A.G. Lambert and Company. That's the original. But this is the one I used.
I think they use the same
I used
basic
the
design.
same basic design. It's lumber around the outside of the diamond and a log across the middle.
Right.
I think Dad drew that originally. And it was never a registered copyright as a trademark, but nobody ever tried to copy it. At least nobody did. Some people said, I like it, I think I'll steal it. You better not or you'll be in court. In other words, you get away with a buck. But
So it says on here, manufacturers of and dealers in rough and dressed lumber, shingles, laths, sashes, doors, molding, etc. So he did manufacture some things like moldings and doors.
we produced in that mill at Taggam, dressed lumber, of course, shingles we bought from Waldy or Rotter at Salmo, and laths from Waldy, sash.
Wally's Castlegar, right?
Waldy's at Castlegar, sash and door from the coast, moldings we produced at that planing plant down at Taggin. There were 2 planers and a resaw, and God, this is 1908. West Cooney Power and Light Company, Rossland. Oh, look at here. We're in receipt of your letter, February the 25th. Read price on boiler at Upper Bonington Falls. Would say that this boiler is larger than what we were looking for, and the price much higher than we anticipated paying for the second-hand boiler. However, we thank you for the quotation. It should be decided to install a boiler. We will write you later. That was signed by my dad, no doubt.
Yeah.
And he knew Lorne Campbell personally, you see, from back in 1900. I addressed it to the company, of course, but when they met, this is hello Alec and hello Lorne. And Dad's company supplied all the lumber and plywood and windows and doors and everything that built all of the plants on the whole river.
Oh, really? Oh,
Sure.
okay.
Excuse me, but I have a question. If he knew Lorne Campbell, do you know if the Cadillac that Lorne Campbell got in 1912 was the first car in the Kootenays, or were there cars before then?
One he got in 1912?
Yeah, there were 2 of them. One became an ambulance, one became his car. But I was wondering if that was the first car in the
They
Kootenays.
weren't 1912.
No?
By no means.
What were they?
Oh, no, that ambulance at the West Kootenai Power and Light lengthened out his Cadillac and made it into an ambulance. That was about 1930.
Well, maybe later. But the first car he had was in 1912.
He didn't buy it in 1912. He bought it at some later date from somebody that owned it, no doubt, because there was no car in here that I know of. The first cars that came in here, Paul Nepo, that ran a laundry,
The first van.
he brought in a white, it was made by the White Company, and the other one was a Ford, I think that Bert Wally, A.T. Wally, Emery and Wally. Either that or
They said Mayor McQuarrie's was the first car.
M.R. McQuarrie maybe had the first one.
Yeah.
And then Wally had one close after, and they were Ford Model Ts.
Oh, McQuarrie's was a Ford too.
I think so. And then the Nelson Transfer Company changed and started to sell cars, and they had General Motors. So the 490 Chevrolets come into the picture then. And the early Baby Grand Chevrolets and Buicks.
What year would that be?
Eh?
What year would that be, do you think?
About 19, Gay Irving bought a 1917 Buick, and so did Louis Larson, and so did Carl Larson. Joe Maher bought one too.
Joe.
Maher and Company.
Those were Buick.
They were Buicks, 6s, and they were the big Buick. Well, then,
Louis, that was the 2 other men that were the same family. Louis.
of the same family?
You said 2 men had the same last name. Irving, Maher, and 2 other men.
Lou Larson.
Larson.
He ran the Standard Furniture Company.
And the other person that had a... Did you say another Larson? Maybe I got it wrong.
They bought them all the same in the 1917 and 1918 Buicks. And there was Johnny Irving's was a green one. Carl Larson's was a gray one. Lou Larson. Carl Larson and Lou Larson. Yes, right.
Yeah, okay.
They were no relations.
Oh, okay.
Lou Larson ran the Standard Furniture, and Carl Larson ran the Nelson Laundry.
Okay, go through those colors again. That's interesting. People are always asking you things like this.
Do they?
Yeah.
Well, Johnny Irving's was the plain one. It was a dark green Buick. The other ones were specials with a little wood trim on them and so on. Larson's and Al Gelinas bought one.
Okay.
The company kept one for a taxi that Albert Kellogg drove. And they were 1917, so they might, what do you call them, might have had a 1912. Cadillac wasn't made by General Motors. General Motors didn't exist in those days. There was Louis Chevrolet ran the Chevrolet outfit. Buick, and along with R.S. McLaughlin, formed the McLaughlin Buick in Ontario, the Canadian company. Buick, Louis Chevrolet, and Will Durant were the origins of General Motors. Durant left them. Then they took in Olds, which was Oldsmobile, and Overland into the thing, and I'm not sure whether Overland's division didn't become Pontiac finally. Oldsmobile is still a division of General Motors, so is Chevrolet, and so is Cadillac. That's the history of it back to about as far as I can remember when I was 10 or 12 years old. But the first Buick we had was a Buick Special 6 that was driven out from not Toronto, but Oakville, in Ontario for the Nelson Transfer Company. And it was a special. It was in between. They made 3 Buicks, the big Buick, the Special, in between, and the 4-cylinder Buick. We bought, the first car we bought, Dad bought a used 1917 Ford with a right-hand drive. That was the first car I drove in 1920. It was a 1917 model. Then we bought a new Star car in 1923 and drove that 2 or 3 years and traded it in on a Buick used from Nelson Transfer Company. And I've been trading for used cars ever since. The only new car I ever owned was that, and I didn't own it, Dad owned it, in 1923 Star. It cost $810. $810. Now that, and I guess I've had 25 cars in my life, but I've always bought good used cars. Even this Volkswagen Campmobile I'm driving now it had 18,000 miles on it when I bought it, with a new car warranty. But these are real something. You can have this envelope too.
Oh, okay. Great.
I just showed it to Darren McKay. Keith as a logo, you know. But this was Casbo here in 1943 to 1953, 10 years. This was Casbo. Before that, it was Lambert Lumber Limited, Nelson. But actually closed their operation here, across from the Bank of Montreal, where that rental place is. That was an enclosed lumber yard on the main street of the town, and that was a dream that Dad had. He said, I want a lumber yard that's respectable, and on the main stem in the town, that you close up at night and is neat and tidy and well painted. In 1913, he built that building. Moved the house that's facing Vernon Street now, off of it. Built that building, and it's still there. All wood. Stuff is on the outside.
Okay,
I burned up about 6 or 8 of them. I don't know why I did it.
okay, now, so, while you had, where was the office? Was that on the corner where Super Valley is now? Was that where the offices were?
The first office, A.G. Lambert and Company.
Right.
That.
Yeah.
Now this doesn't, this is
That just says
1908.
8, yeah.
From 1905 to 1913, that was the location, right where the supervisor is.
Okay, 1905 to 13. Okay. Mrs. Edgar thought that location was Burns Lumber, but it wasn't.
In the middle of the block it was,
Oh.
John Burns and Son.
Oh, okay.
But Dad's outfit was on the corner.
On the corner. Okay.
Burns was in the middle,
Okay. Okay.
and where the
Lambert?
Shamrock is was Mrs.
Montellion's.
Montellion's store.
Right.
Did you ever buy any booze there by any chance?
Eh? Did I what?
They tell us that she sold liquor.
Liquor.
Yes.
She was a grand woman,
Yeah.
and as big-hearted as she was big bodily. She
Yeah.
was 6 feet tall and about 240 pounds, and some woman.
Yeah.
Well, Benny's mother.
Yeah. So Mr.
I remember
Kirby
Benny
was,
when he was that high, eh?
Kirby was telling us he used to work for her for a while. When he went down onto that, when they were building the Civic Center, he said he used to work in there for her.
Did he?
She wanted someone to come and help. She was very busy because the man that were building the Civic Center would come over, so he went in and worked for her. I think the place he had been running had burned or something had happened to it. I can't remember.
That must have been the time when they had a fire in the Nelson transfer.
Yeah.
He was working, he came in 1919 to be the,
Mechanic or
he was the shop foreman for the Nelson transfer company.
okay, where did office? Where did it go after 1913?
Well, the office and whole operation moved up
to.
right across from the Bank of Montreal.
Okay. Okay, after 1913 to Kootenai and Baker. Renewal.
Yeah, and
And
that
that-
building was 75 feet by 120.
Yeah.
And that was our building until I sold it to Herb Harrop in 1946.
Okay. Lambert.
It's been idle from 1942 or 43 until 1946 until Herb needed it more than we
Yeah.
did.
Sold to Herb Harris. And he turned it into Bradley.
No, we did that in 1934.
Oh, okay.
We took a third of the building and made it into the garage and
Oh.
leased that to the Union Oil Company.
Okay, took 1/3 of building
Or,
and leased to Union,
oil company that later became BA Oil.
later VA, okay. Okay. And the rest of the building?
Was lumberyard.
Lumberyard.
And our office is where that next to Nelson Woodworking, what the hell's the name of that? Some kind of a,
The IODE or the place where you get your t-shirts made?
yeah, one,
Maxie's.
eh?
Maxie's, where you get your t-shirts
I
made?
don't know what's in there. It's had 3 or 4 or 5 different
Yeah.
efforts in there and partly educational programs and one damn
Oh.
thing another.
Okay.
Right next to Nelson Woodworking.
Okay.
That was our office.
Okay. And was the Christian Science Church there then?
Oh no, Christian Science. I remember it being built. It was built on a portion of the old H&M or Harry Bird household property. There used to be a big house behind Bill's Motor Inn that was later owned by Lawrence Simpson and his sister. And part of that property, which was originally Rose Garden and one thing and another, and places where they had strawberry socials, you know, and all that sort of thing put on by the churches and so on. Bird was in the insurance and real estate business, H&M Bird. And that was Harry Bird's house there, the big one. And a piece of that land became where the Christian Science Church is.
Okay. Okay. And do you remember Mr. Berrigan coming to a house across the street from you where they put out a red carpet when he was coming to town? Strellock's house? Does that ring a bell to you at all?
Peter Berrigan the first.
Yeah.
Peter Nordley.
Yeah, would come and visit in a house next door to the Daily News building. Somewhere right in there somewhere.
Well, there was 3 houses. From the Daily News toward the Savoy, there was first what the hell was the name of that little house next to it? And then there was 3 houses. 2 of them, one was E.Y. Brakes, who was the head of the repair department of the CPR. There were 2 houses on the front of the lot toward Baker Street and one in the middle at the alley. They were all the same, 3 of them, built by the same man. And next to them, there was a house on the corner, and I can't remember, or some kind of a building that was torn down in 1931 or 2. Dr. Harton's old house originally was on the alley. They moved it from there down the hill and around on Vernon Street, and it's still standing there facing on Vernon. One of those houses on Vernon Street behind the People's Motor Inn. But
that doesn't ring a bell to you about Lord Peter.
But Peter Nordley was supposed to have visited Nelson.
Yeah, they said he used to come into town, and they can remember that these people, their name was Strellock, and they lived by the Daily News, and they said that they remember when he was coming to town, they used to roll a red carpet right down to the street. And they remember they used to see that.
Who was it told the story?
It might have been Edith Edgar. I can't
I
remember.
wonder if Edith's memory is getting a little warped.
Maybe. I don't know. I just thought I try to.
I know Edith. I know her from the time we went to Hume school together,
Yeah.
and year older than me, I think, or so.
Yeah.
But I don't know whether that was a story told by her dad, or I'm sure she doesn't remember.
Okay, okay, let's go back to
I
the,
never heard of that.
okay.
That was at the Battle of Baker Street, and that was right in front of our office, in between that and the Bank of Montreal.
Well, what's the Battle of Baker Street? What was that?
About 200 Doukhobors that marched downtown. They wanted to live in this country and have all the protections of our democratic organizations and our laws, but they didn't want to register births, deaths, or marriages, and they wanted to change wives as it suited them, and live according to the laws of the Almighty, according to their interpretation, and not pay taxes. They wouldn't pay school taxes, and so on. So that's what started all the row of the Doukhobors in this country. And the leaders of it, Peter Lordley and his Christian Community of Universal Brotherhood Limited, CCOUB Limited, they became law-abiding citizens that we know here now. The offshoot, hardcore, basic Doukhobor religion fanatics became finally, after they were kicked out of the community by the community itself, and the government put them on crown land up at Cristova, became the Cristova Freedomites. And they have just about all died off, except 2 or 3 women that still are hooked up to depredations of one kind and another, or go on hunger strikes in jail and so on, but they're dying off. There's a few of them, about 35 years old, who were kids born in this country that have no darn reason to be religious fanatics.
Kay was at Sorokin's funeral. Kay was at Sorokin's funeral.
Were you?
Yeah, people that swore that they had nothing to do with any of that showed up. They came from all over.
That swore they weren't anything to do with the Freedomites at all.
But they were there.
Yeah.
Interesting.
You know, some of that is father or mother to son. The Doukhobor community, you know, have been led by a series of loud-talking matriarchs.
Yes, that's for sure.
Women.
Yes.
They're the damn troublemakers. The men, not too many of the men needed to be very seriously controlled, but the hotheads were some of the loud-talking women. And they have kept that Doukhobor problem, as it's called, alive up until today. And there's no reason for it whatever. Lord, we got Doukhobors in the federal government, we got them attorney generals, and we've got them in dentists and doctors and lawyers. And the Doukhobor problem is long gone, except for a few hardheads. You know?
Well, there were 200 of them marching on Baker Street. Where were they going?
They came in as a protest march to against taxes and trying to make them abide by our rules in this country, and threatened a nude parade. They stopped them right at the Bank of Montreal with a fire truck and turned the hose on them, and then turned them around and headed them down the hill again. And some of them objected strongly and offered holded fist resistance and got knocked out and carried along with the rest of them. And It was rough and tumble
What
half
year
an
was
hour.
that?
I don't know what year it was. It was prior to 1934. It was about 1932 or something like
I'll
that.
look in the old Daily News file.
You
Yeah.
look in 1932 or so because it was well written up.
Right. My mother's introduction to Nelson, I mean, she was a hoity-toity from Victoria.
Yeah.
Her introduction to Nelson, the morning she got here on the train, Dad picked her up at the station. They went straight up Baker, turned down by the City Hall, with present City Hall, and there were a great crowd of news people, one of whom had on his head oranges and a veil.
Orange Sam.
That was her introduction to Nelson. She said, "Where am I? What is this?" Yeah. Oh well.
Your mother, Violet, would get quite an introduction.
Yes, that was it.
And your dad would laugh his head
Oh,
off.
right. Exactly.
He had a wry sense of humor.
Yes,
you know.
he certainly did. Yeah.
And your mother never forgot that. He never let her forget it, did he?
No.
Eh?
No.
How
The story that went with it was that this gentleman with the oranges on his head went to the courthouse and announced that he was the king of the oranges, and they said, "You're welcome, Your Majesty, come right in." I don't know if that's true, but
that guy was a screwball fanatic.
no. You call him Orange Sam.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay, let's go back to this lumber business. I'm going to ask you, okay, if you remember some of these other companies, if you remember anything about them on some of these other invoices. That's 1897. You don't remember that, but have you heard of the Gray Nelson Planing Mill with T.W. Gray? Does that ring any bells? If it doesn't,
I don't know where their operation was. I suppose they were down on the waterfront, alongside a railroad track, somewhere on the waterfront. And I'm not sure that Gray wasn't originally interested in the Yale Columbia Lumber Company. Had the first big sawmill here.
Okay.
But I'm not sure. Don't quote me on that.
No, I'm just seeing if anything rings a bell. How about these fellows? There's no date on there or anything.
Oh, Lindsay Brothers Coal Company, sure. Oh yeah, Lindsay, we knew him real well. He ended up, the last operation he had was at Wesley, where Selgar is.
Did he live were they
He lived
living
in town here.
Lived in Nelson.
Yeah.
And where was their operation when they were in Nelson?
They only had an office. They bought Cedar Falls.
Okay.
I don't
Now,
know.
this is
I don't know
very
where their head office was.
This is 1894, so I don't know about that. The Nelson Sawmill Company. That might be one of the very early ones.
1890. Is that 4 or 7?
Oh, it might be a 7. It looks so 4 to me.
I think it's a 7.
Oh, okay.
There was nothing here in 1894. Old Nelson Lambert came here in 1887, and there was nothing but tents on the shore. Nelson grew at a whale of a rate the first 10 years.
Okay, here's the Patrick.
Raw.
Yeah, that's your state. That may have been only I don't know if it's the manager or owner or what.
He was brought in the manager. Good writer.
Okay. Then Patrick Lumber, is that the father of the Patrick?
Yeah, that was Joseph Patrick, and their head office was Nelson here. But,
That's the father of all those hockey players?
yeah, he was the father of Frank and Lester.
Uh-huh.
And Guy, and, what was the other younger brother? There was Lester, Frank, Guy, and another one, 4 brothers, and 2 girls in the family. Cindy and, what was the other one? their operation was a big sawmill at Crescent Valley,
Ah.
and their office was in Nelson. At first, it was in my dad's office.
Oh.
All he did was call Dad's office the headquarters in town, because they weren't in the retail business.
This is a very interesting
But
thing. This was a certificate to Dr. Borden.
Yeah, I know, but it wasn't A.L. Borden, it was L.A. Borden.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Huh.
and I forget his first name, Llewellyn or something like that.
So that was a
But
mistake.
Dr. Borden became member of Parliament, but Borden and McKay became Borden and McKay and Morrison, and then McKay and Morrison, when Borden died, got out of it, or he went to the coast. And
Yeah, well, Russell
and
Fletcher
Dr.
told us
Borden-
Dr. Borden examined him when he joined us. When we went to talk to Lester, to Russell Fletcher, he said Dr. Borden examined him when he joined up for the First World War.
Oh yeah,
Military.
that's right. Dr. Borden was he was practicing in 1935 when the medical arts building was built. Sure.
This is interesting. Was this a sort of a Medicare in those days?
No, yeah, this was the contract between the Patrick Lumber Company and Borden and McKay, or it was Borden and Vigneault. Vigneault
Dr. Vigneault that drowned.
got drowned. I was there the afternoon he drowned, and at the park. And then he took in McKay, and this was the contract, $1 a month. Okay, that's $1 hospital fee for the month of, and it entitles it treatment by you according to the terms of the contract, which contract the bearer has acknowledged. We have duly read and agreed thereto. Patrick Lumber Company. This is the slip, the hospital slip that you gave an employee. Patrick signed it here, and they put the name of the employee here, and he was under.
He was cared for at the hospital.
He was cared for by the doctors.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Not the hospital. You got a hospital bill, but this was your medical. You paid nothing for operation or fixing broken bones or what.
So there was actually Medicare in those days.
They were the original, and
Yeah.
and it was in my case Dr. Rose and Harton, not Borden and McKay, because they were Dad's company. The president was Dr. W.O. Rose, and his partner was Harton.
Right. So that was who you dealt with.
They were up in the KWC block.
Okay, does that one ring a bell?
No. I never heard of Bishop that I know.
That might be very early.
I don't know, it might not, but I don't think he was here long. Phone 231, so this was in about 1930 or something.
Oh, okay. So we're getting a little
231,
late.
our number, Dad's telephone number in this company was 82.
Okay, I better...
Swift Canadian Company was 129.
Yeah, telephone, 82.
Yeah, and A. McDonald Company, prior to parent company of Supervisor.
Oh, okay. Kelly Douglas.
Kelly Douglas.
Yeah.
A. McDonald was the one that built that brick building on the corner of Hall and Front Street.
Right.
And their number was 128. I
you
know this because in the transport business, I got out of the lumber business in 1930 and 33, and it was in the taxi and transport business. And we started the first truck lines out of Nelson, the company I helped form. I was the secretary treasurer of it in 1930. I was 28 years old then. And I formed 3 companies in my life. And this company I was in ran from here to Selma and Sheep Creek and down to Erie. And the other line went to Trail, Rossland, and Fruitvale. And we had 5 cars on the stand as taxis. We're in the Griffin block right where Waite's newsstand is on the corner. It burned down, but these...
When did they build the road to Selma?
1925.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so that, you think this must be in the 20s?
This was...
By the phone number?
Well, 231, you see.
Yeah.
All of the numbers that I can remember...
Or 2?
Were under 200.
Yeah. Okay. I'm just going to scrawl a little note on the back.
I still have 150 numbers in my head that are present day numbers, but I can still remember back to 1930 all the places that were shipping things, and we'd call them up every morning to find out how much tonnage they had to ship to Trail or to Selma or so on, you know.
Okay, in here it says that the Lambert Lumber Company had received attention from the firebug. This is David Scott's book. Lambert Lumber.
There had been 2 attacks against the Yale Columbia Lumber Mill and the Lambert Lumber Yard, and also received attention. No, it never did.
Okay.
Never did.
Well, you have to check up on these things. You never, I mean, why would David
How
say
the hell
that?
would David Scott know anything about it? Hell, I remember him when he was a kid.
Right. Well, he looked in the old papers. Okay,
Oh
page
yeah, I know.
111.
We were never threatened. Dad's company was never threatened. In fact, our relationship with the Duke of Boers was real good because Dad knew old Peter Lordy personally, and I can remember him.
But you don't think the firebug was?
The firebug in 1911.
Yeah, well, that's what this is. This is 1911.
Well, I know, but it wasn't the Yale Columbia Lumber Mill in 1911 when that burned down. That was the Forest Mills.
Okay, well, let's go to these old pictures
The
now.
Yale Columbia Lumber Mill burned before that.
No.
An abortive attempt had been made to burn down the provincial jail, but it only resulted in $50 damage. 1911, the firebug, who was caught and went to jail for 10 years for arson, he burned down in 1911 the brewery up on Latimer Street,
They'd hang him for
the
that,
Hall
wouldn't they?
Mines smelter, the Forest Mills on the waterfront,
Forest?
Mills,
2 R's? What R?
MILLS, Forest Mills Limited, I think it was called. Forest Mills, the brewery, the Hall Mines smelter. Boy, when he lit fires, he lit them.
Yeah.
We lived on Cedar Street when the Hall Mines smelter burned, and Dad read the newspaper in the light of that fire on Cedar Street, and it was across the whole town. About 7 or 8 buildings all on fire at once. Boy, that was a humdinger. But, what else did he burn? He didn't burn small things. He wanted to go for broke every time.
Really.
But I guess the sucker stood around and watched it.
Why did he do it?
He was a pyromaniac. That's a lover of fire.
He never came back to Nelson Nose, did he?
After you
I don't know what the heck happened to him, but he
joined the
went
incendiary
to the coop and was there for a long time, and I don't think Nelson ever heard of him again. This is David Scott and Edna Hannick. You know, I was down on the corner here across the street when that burned at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Boy, was that a hot one.
Okay, let's go through some of these old pictures I brought, the lumber one. This says here, this was a lumber yard on the waterfront, vicinity of Goodwood Balance Hardware Warehouse and the Chockamika Mall. Now, it doesn't say what lumber mill it is or anything, but there's some Italians in the picture. And Edna Hannock wrote on here, possibly Freno family. So, have a look at the picture and see what you think.
Vicinity of Good Balance Hardware Warehouse and New Chockamika Mall.
Of course, that was written a long time.
Now, no, the Wood Balance Warehouse, they had two of them. One was across the track, right opposite the T.H. Waterton Company. The other one is where Lee's Auto House is. That was the pipe and sheet metal warehouse. And right where the Chockamika Mall is, that's all been filled in, but that was waterfront property, and then that was the location there of the Yale Columbia Lumber Company originally, and then Forest Mills. And it was the firebug in 1911 that burned down the Forest Mills. And
somebody wrote down there, but okay,
Lumber Garden Waterfront. I would say this is about, this looks like the, sure, that's the location. See, this is, I don't know whether that isn't railway track. Might be street railway on Front Street, right by the government warehouse. The government shops are. And you're looking across the lake.
oh yeah,
And there's the railway
there's the
over
railway
there.
track, yeah.
And on the other side of that railway was the sawmill. This was all lumber yard.
Okay,
All
so
where
we've got
the government is.
Front Street and we've got the streetcar track. Okay, and
I
then
think that's where it is.
lumber yard. And then the railway. And then the sawmill. And then the lake.
Yeah, this would be Front Street here.
Yeah. Okay, and this is where government
Where the government
works are.
shops are.
Okay, well what mill was that then?
Well, that was all. Everything from this street to the lake was owned by the Yale
That
Columbia
was the Yale
first,
Columbia. And
then
then Forest.
Forest Mills took them over.
So that's pre-1911 then, because there's
That was prior to 1911.
any idea who the
Forest North
people are?
Mines.
It's hard to see it. It's very faded. Hey, look.
Oh, you see, these are young bucks,
Yeah.
and I
And
would.
there's mattresses on there.
Well, I'll tell you another thing. Right across from this was the mattress factory.
Oh!
They made mattresses
Across, like where
Right
this
across.
Lakeland was?
right where the Aqua Center
Yeah.
is.
Okay.
Was the mattress factory run by A.W. Nagel. Nagel and Wilkinson. They were the originals in it.
Nagel.
Nagel, N-A-G-L-E.
Oh. Okay. And what was his partner?
Wilkinson. Nagel get out of it. No, he ran it the last.
So the mattress factory was below the exhibition grounds. or the
Yeah,
Civic
right
Center
where-
grounds.
It was in between the exhibition grounds and Front Street, right where the Aqua Center is, because the little house that's next to the Aqua Center
Yeah.
was Lawrence Simpson's father's place, and that was next to the mattress factory.
Okay, so it must be right in here somewhere. Or is that too early?
I've got some old pictures I should go and dig up and show you. What was that fire on my
That's the, Sash and Door Factory fire.
Was it?
What it says. Says, Kootenai River Lumber Company Sash and Door Factory fire, 1903, April 16th. Well, you were just 1 year old.
Kootenai River Lumber Company. Kootenai River Lumber Company. 1903. That was before that. Maybe that was the Columbia Lumber Company.
The fire is
Sash
down
and Door
across
Factory.
the track, it looks like. It looks like the fire is down across the track.
This is looking down Hall Street.
Yeah.
And this is the Yale Columbia fire. This is the city wharf right down here.
Yeah.
Now, this is
3, it says.
1903. Well, you see, there was a lot of little operations
Yeah, oh, for
started
sure.
in those days, and they were either absorbed by others
Or became,
or
so that's the little picture that, it says Yale Columbia Lumber Company. Somebody gave just a tiny, it's very hard to see.
Yale Columbia Lumber
Yeah, we'll have to get that one blown up.
up on Carling.
And that one?
Now this looks like the Forest Mills.
Wow.
That was a pretty sophisticated operation. What the hell does it say on here?
Oh, I just wrote on there, industrial, business industrial. There's no other, nothing.
Nothing. I bet you Russell Fletcher could tell you what.
Yeah, I think he probably could too.
He could tell if that's the appearance of the Forest Mills. That was the devil of the big fire. 1899.
Yeah,
Out
these
here.
two pictures are from the Bridges, the Fisher
Oh God.
Mill. Isn't that neat?
Yeah. Well, this is 1899. Sam Bridges was the real estate
Yeah,
and insurance.
right.
Now this is probably the earliest planing mill, you see. This is a primitive planer. Dash and door. And I don't know whether that 1899, Waters and Pasco weren't in business then. I don't know who that would be. Somebody prior to
Well, on this one, they marked some names. These were from, Joy's photograph.
Crease
Yeah.
on the right, not on the left. Who I don't know. Oh, this is Rag. Eddie Rag wrote this. E.C. Rag. I do not know.
Do not recognize, who I do not recognize is S.M. Bridges.
S.M. Bridges.
He doesn't recognize him. And he says, Crease is on the right, not on the left. This must be Crease.
On the right, not on the left.
I think Edna took these pictures to Mr. Ragg, and he looked at some of them. This is exact Mr. Crease.
And I don't remember. I only knew Crease when his hair was gray. Yeah.
This is supposed to be Mr. Bridges
That's
here.
Sam Bridges, I think. But where this is a sawmill, you see.
It's the same one. It's the same one as this, I think. Same pictures, because they're by the C.W. Miller, and it says Bridges Fisher Company, LTC, and it says Bridges Fisher Lumber Company, LTC. So it's just another part of the same Miller.
This is yeah, how criminal that is. called a sawmill, I suppose, but there's a circular saw, and this is the knee of the carriage, and there's the timber that has been sawn, comes from this end past the saw, and ends up here. But this is just the bare bones of making a round timber into a square one. It's not a sawmill, but it's a primitive facsimile thereof.
Looks like it worked on pulleys.
Oh, well, I know, but that's the way the carriage moves. That's the carriage drum, and it's run by cable. There.
I should put these on the thing.
No, don't look at the, don't look at the TV, look at me.
The left-hand mill, even. The teeth of the saw show me that.
I'm just showing these onto the camera, these Bridges Fisher,
Oh,
for whoever, you know, the person
no.
who's looking
Just to
at
get
the
them on
video,
the-
just to have them on here so they'll,
Yeah.
you know, this is what Mr. Lambert was talking about here, this very primitive operation where the lumber came from this side, was carried through the saw, and came out this side. He said this very primitive operation.
It's only just a little tiny piece of a sauna.
Right.
Rural mill site, what?
Now, have you any idea where that is? That's, I wanted to ask you. That's all we know is that it's that looked to me, I wondered if it was Proctor looking up Kokanee or, no. Okay. Arrow Lakes maybe or something then? Or, yeah, okay. I just didn't have a clue either. Looks like around here, but maybe up Caswell way or something with the mountains
Could be
so high.
anywhere.
Yeah, okay. Just
That
thought you might,
could be in any place where there's,
lake and,
well, it could be Spokane Lake, Arrow Lakes,
right,
Kootenai Lake.
right, and we have no
And
idea.
I don't, this isn't Roman. This is the wrong shape of the mountain. It's a possibility, you know. I don't know, you might get an angle that shows this is Roman, but it doesn't
Mountain doesn't look right to be
It doesn't look right, because looking at Gorman, you never get all white snow when you've got this condition here.
No, you've got that one mountain at the back, that big one where it's Mount Baldy at the back, but you don't see this. You just see one sticking up right here.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's what I thought.
and this would be like at the CPR flats.
The cars are very, you know, 20s it looks like, trucks.
Is that a truck?
Oh, maybe not. Maybe it's
I
a
don't-
forklift or something.
No, there's no such thing as a forklift invented then.
We don't even know what year it is.
No,
No year or
but,
anything.
I don't know what kind, it's a mill site of some kind, someplace, but that could be over at any place.
Yeah, okay,
Well,
just thought I'd ask.
I don't
I'll
know.
show it on the camera. We just didn't have any idea where it was. It just says lumber mill.
Mill site.
Yeah.
I don't think it's,
Does that ring any bells to you, kid? Those
There
two
was a
big
lot.
mountains?
there was a lot
Okay.
of mill operations that took place in this country that sometimes only lasted 8 or 10 years and then they were gone.
Okay, well, when your father ran out of lumber at Sproule Creek, did he ever? When did the Tagum operation close down?
1933.
Was that because he was out of lumber or because?
It was not out of lumber but getting close to it and had developed into wholesale and retail. Then we bought lumber wholesale and sold it as commission agents for buyers in the East that we had our contacts with. In 1934, between 1933, my dad's company was put out of business by the Imperial Bank in the Depression. They just couldn't pay their $45,000 loans as fast as the bank said. Same as
Same as it's
here,
happening right now.
happening right now.
Yeah.
So they were forced into bankruptcy, and then we, Dad and the family, with me being in it as the active operator amongst the young ones, the rest weren't, we formed Lambert Lumber Limited, private stock company, which was owned by the family. 2 sisters, 2 brothers, myself, Dad and Mother, and my aunt. Family company. The previous company, A.G. Lambert Company Limited, in 1913 went into a public stock company with the stock owned by people from Iowa to God knows where. Regular public stock company, just like companies are today. So from 1933 on, Dad, during that winter, sold a few carloads from Waldy's or some of the other mills to contacts that he had. And the regular going commission for wholesale lumber buying and selling was 5% of invoice. But then in 1934 we started up the company, and with the help of my aunt, who was a mortgage holder on the building across from the Bank of Montreal, she transferred her mortgage, let the guarantors of the company off the hook, and took that piece of property as in repayment of her mortgage. Well, then she remortgaged it to Dad and my brothers and me, forming Lambert Lumber Limited. In other words, we kept it still in the family, and we got a continuous operation of our location. That was the important part. Otherwise, that building or that property would have been sold and the building torn down or something else happened to it. But by having my aunt, Dad's sister, in between, that piece of property didn't get out of our hands. We still operated out of the same office. But then finally, in order to help finance the ownership and be able to pay it off, finally, we cut a third out of the building and made it into the garage shop and automobile operation. It kept the main driveway from the front door right to the back alley and around behind the garage, that area. So we had 2/3 of the building and the garage had 1/3. And we gave the Union Oil Company a 10-year lease. 5 years with an option of a further 5 at the same price. Finally, Union Oil became taken over by British American Oil. And at the end of the 10-year lease, they had an option on the property. And the option had a flaw in it. Very often in legal descriptions of property, I've had experience in the real estate business with discrepancies in surveys of property, and the description of a property from point A, so many rods or chains or feet, to point B, to point C, to point around to point of commencement, closed survey. So many acres, more or less. In this doggone lease, an option, there was a mistake made, and the piece in front that goes right over to that funny office that used to be ours, in the lease and option, the front went right over to our windows, across our front door, and it closes off if they exercise the lease. It should have come right through to the sidewalk, an extension of the cement wall inside, right out to the sidewalk. That wouldn't cut ours off. But in the setting up of the documents with the Union Oil, they described that piece so many feet this way and that way, and when we signed it, and nobody noticed it, didn't follow the exact footage. And they'd had 8 years happy arrangements with the company, and nobody thought anything about it. 9 years goes by and nothing about it. And I dug the lease out, and I read it in detail, and suddenly realized that if they exercised the lease, they'd close us out, and they'd make the balance 2/3 of the building worthless as a lumberyard. So I immediately ran up with it to Eric Dawson, our lawyer. He read it over. I said, "Do you see what I see?" And he said, "Yeah." The officials never read it, I guess, and we never from this side. And
Oh boy.
we understood what we were doing, but in the legal description of it, it was taken the easy way by whoever made the lease out. The Union Oil made the lease out. He said, "Does anybody know about this but you?" And I said, "No." He said, "Your brothers don't know anything about it?" I said, "No. I just found it today." And I said, "I'm so upset I wanted to talk over with you." And he said, "Nobody but you and I know anything about it, do we?" I said, "No." He says, "Let's leave it that way." I said, "And then what?" He said, "Hope that they don't, the Union Oil don't, or the BA Oil don't wake up to what they've got. Because they can put you out of business." I said, "I'll not tell anybody." So, a man by the name of Tom Carew was the manager here in town for the BA Oil. The day and the date and the hour came. And it was 12 o'clock noon on a certain day. 12 o'clock noon. That's an odd thing. Generally, it's 12 o'clock midnight in leases. One full day. But this happened to be signed in the middle of the day, so it was, as of that day, 12 o'clock noon. About 3 days before the deadline date, I went up to Eric again at Dawson, and he said, "What date is that?" I says, I forget the date they had. Like, this is Tuesday, and I said, "It's Friday, 12 o'clock noon." He says, "Oh, and nothing's been said?" I said, "No." He said, "Well, if they're going to exercise the option," they had an option to purchase their chunk for $17,000. If they had exercised their option for $17,000, what we had left of the building wasn't worth $5, you know, because we lost control of it. He said they better get their money on the bar pretty soon, hadn't they? And I said, "I would think so." But I said, "I hope they don't." He said, "Why?" I said, "I can sell it for another $10,000 on top of $17,000. I said, "I don't want to lose the $10,000 either. So all I do is quit breathing from now until 12 o'clock noon, 3 days from now, and this hope that nobody wakes up. The trick in the thing was that the company, the Union Oil, had made the deal and sold to the BA Oil, and the same officials weren't in charge, so they didn't know all the things that had gone before. That was the only key to it. So about 10 minutes, about 10 or 15 minutes to 12 on the fatal day, I went down to the BA Oil station on Government Road to Tom, Weathercomb's office. And time slipping on. Hello, Tom. How are you this morning? And hello, George. How are things going? Fine. Tick, 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 tick. Toward 12 o'clock, you know, and at 5 minutes to 12, I said, you know, it's, I said, have you heard anything from head office at the coast at all about, the lease on the building? Oh, he said, yeah, he says, they're gonna take it up all right. They're gonna take the option up. I said, are they? And, he said, oh yeah, he says, couldn't pass that up. I said, when are they gonna do it? Oh, he said, you'll hear in plenty of time. And I said, that's interesting, you know. Because I said, it's gotta be awful bloody fast. He said, what do you mean? Well, I said, you got 5 minutes. He said, you mean this is a day? I said, yeah. And I said, if we just keep talking, I said, the CPR whistle will blow and that'll be 12 o'clock and it's over. He said, oh, can't be. Somebody must have made an awful blunder. Somebody will sure get shot over this. I said, well, that's up to you. But I said, better be quick. There's got to be a marked check in my hand. And then the whistle blew. I said, it's over. He says, what do you mean it's over? They had a tenant in the place. It was under lease. Regular operating garage and service station. I said, I'm going back up to the office and I'll write you a registered letter and put it in the mail, and you'll get it tomorrow morning, and it's going to say in it, I give you hereby, I hereby do give you 30 days to move out, body and breeches. You know? He says, you wouldn't. I said, yeah, I'm going to do that. You're out. 30 days from now. You're out of control. He said, boy, will there be somebody get their neck busted over this. I said, go ahead, bust your necks. It's not mine, it's yours. Get on the phone to Vancouver and see what kind of first start to apply. But I'm going to write the letter this afternoon and have it in the mail. I kicked them out, too.
But you would have to
took 3 years before I sold it to Herb Harrell. But we sold it for $26,000 cash instead of 17. 9,000 difference. Then I paid up all the bills they owed in town. Bank and everybody else. That's fun. Loved it. Run around town with a bank book sticking out of my pocket a foot. You know.
And then you were out of the lumber business for a number of years until you opened up in Castle?
I opened up in Castle and I sold this place in 1946, 3 years after this.
Oh, okay.
Sure.
All right.
I just closed this down, except for the garage. Closed the lumber
up
during
in
the war,
Castle.
you know.
Opened up in Castle.
Then we built the sawmill in Castle and operated there for 10
For
years.
10 years.
Using a big portion of Japanese labor. There were a lot of sawmill men and loggers.
And then you gave up on the lumber business in 53?
That operation closed down in 53, and then I was in partnership in a logging operation for a year across the Murphy Creek, across from Castle. And then, from then on, I was a carpenter for 3 years, working for Lawrence Simpson, and then I worked for the city for 5 or 6 years on a half a dozen jobs, and finally ended up in the real estate business for McCarty Agencies.
And did anybody
That's
else?
when I met Sylvia Brashear.
Did anybody else in the family do anything in the lumber business? No.
I brought my brother Buck back from Port Arthur. He was there during the war at the Prince Arthur Hotel. And then when the boys started to come back in 1945 and 6, in 1947, he and his wife and little boy came back to Nelson, and he was, for a year, he was our office man.
Wow.
And then he had the opportunity to go into business with C.W. Appleyard, and he went on from there in the real estate and insurance.
So he was 1 year, but no one else was interested in the family.
Well, nobody knew anything about the lumber business but me.
Right,
and the
and
family.
the uncle that
Buck
came
didn't
out
know.
from Ontario, did he work with your dad at all?
Well, I know, but he had never been in
No.
the lumber business.
No. Okay.
I was the only one in the family that followed the lumber business.
That was this Julie Reister, Julius said his dad wouldn't let anybody become a brewery, work in a brewery. He said one was enough in the family. When we were talking to Julius Reister, he said that.
Oh, Reister, yeah.
He said that nobody in their family went into the brewery. That the uncle was and his dad was.
Yeah, they were both in the brewery business, and Julius Senior, that was his name, wasn't it?
I think that, I'm not positive if that was Jenny.
Yeah, I think it was Julius Reister Senior. That was the first brewer for old Bill Gosnell. I'm not sure that the Reisters didn't start a little brewery of their own, and then were absorbed by Gosnell in the Nelson Brewing Company, and Julius went as the brewmaster.
Yeah. Then he left for a little while and went to Trail, and then he ended up coming back.
Well, Trail Brewery finally became Nelson Brewery.
Part of.
Yeah, and part of the directorship of the Nelson Brewing Company owned the Princeton Brewery. Blomberg and Tregillis were both directors of the Nelson Brewing Company, which became Kootenai Breweries. But they, in turn, Tregillis and Malone, were the owners of the Princeton Brewery. The Princeton Brewery was right where the Greyhound Depot is over there, right against that solid rock. In Princeton. You know where the Greyhound Depot is there?
Okay.
I want a cup of coffee, and it's on the stove.
Time to call.
Ready.
Oh, really? Are you offering one?
And I've got a
I
piece.
think that's enough, too.
And I've got a piece of Valentine cake that Renee Fink made and gave me yesterday. So you gotta have some cake and a little ice cream on it
Okay.
and a cup of coffee.
Oh, I see. Okay, sure. That's great.
I've got just one last question. What did Herb Harrop do with the building?
He kept it until he sold it to Rudy Fisher.
But did he do anything with it?
He just kept it as a rental. He owned 5 or 6 buildings in town. He originally owned where the Trans-Canada Glass is, and he owned Bill's Motor Inn, And he owned, where, Art Stevens is, the old Gem Theater building. He owned our building. He owned the curb block. He owned where, Shaw Cable is. That was started as an undertaking parlor by two boys from Castlegar. Dickinson, I think his name was.
Shaw Cable?
Eh?
The Shaw Cable building?
Yeah, the Shaw Cable building was built as an undertaking parlor.
And it was used for that?
Eh?
And it was used for that?
Oh, sure. It operated for 2 or 3 years until they went broke.
No comment.
Okay.
Yes, the war on it.
I never did like it in there anyway.
Let's go, yeah, okay. Dell's Motor Inn, Trans Canada Glass, that's interesting. He owned a lot of property.
Well, he at one time owned about 9 houses in Fairview. But at the time that he sold this, he had 3 farms over at Crawford Bay and a couple at Harrow. And he sold to that group that owned all of the golf course and everything over.
Kokanee Springs.
Eh?
Kokanee Springs.
Kokanee Springs, he amalgamated 3 farms and had a package to sell. Herb was a farmer at heart, you know.
Yeah.
He couldn't get away from animals.
He always was taking crowds of kids out to riding horses.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, well, let's take a break and then see how we are.
Yeah, shut off the...
Yep.
Machine. That's great. Whew.
What do? Just shut off the switch?
Yeah. Just turns it off on the recorder. Just like a tape recorder.
Oh, I
And company offices and buildings at where Super Value is now. Hall and Vernon Street. On the back it says corners Vernon and Henry Street. Left to right. W.D. Mann, the question mark. Teamsters, the question mark. Foreman, William E. Cole. Manager, A.G. Lambert. Accountant, Samuel Fawcett. And these next 2 pictures are the interior of that same office building. And the people are left to right. W.M. E. Cole, foreman. W. Harry Houston, visitor. Jack Bell, employee, son of John Bell, co-owner with Mr. Lambert. And Alex G. Lambert, manager. It says Office of A.G. Lambert and Company, formed 1905. A.G. Lambert and John Bell. Mr. Bell was later the mayor of Nelson. This is at the corner of Vernon and Henry Street. Okay. The same interior of the same office building. Office of A.G. Lambert and Company. Left to right, Oliver Harris, Teamster. Arthur G. Bush, visitor. Samuel Fawcett, bookkeeper. A.G. Lambert, manager. And E.D. Shaw Glazier, who later worked for Woodbound Hardware as the shipper. Glazier, glass.
Ed Shaw, it was.
Ed Shaw? Okay.
Yeah.
Ed Shaw. That Glazier, he would make glass for the windows he made, I guess. Alright, here's Nelson in possibly 1894. That photo was by Harry T. Devine, photographer in Vancouver. And an earlier Nelson picture, possibly 1891, looking down Baker Street. And that photo's not named. Oh yeah, the photographer was McGregor. Alright, now we go out to Mr. Lambert's business out at Hagham. And we have We'll go from the lakefront up. Okay. The railroad called this place Tagum, but the post office was named after the man who ran it. His name was Mr. Williams, so this is also known as Williams Sign. Can you get it?
I'm focused right against the clock
Okay.
that you're at, and that hits the light right.
Right, okay. This was the planing mill and yard at Tagum before the highway bridge was built and before the Duke of York Society bought the farm. That's a great picture. Just about finished here, Mr. Lambert.
They're the best photography of the time I've ever seen.
Right, these pictures are all by Watts, who was an elder.
Warren Brothers.
All right, 1915 approximately, the PP&J Railroad.
And Ellis McClintock is the guy who named it.
Yeah, and Ellis McClintock was the man who drove the engine. And he's the character we'll see in one of the other pictures. And he was a great fun for the boys, the Lambert boys, to work with, and the other boys who worked for Mr. Lambert.
Well,
He's a good fellow. Ellis
The
McClintock.
P&J road was a push, pull, and jerk.
Push, pull, and jerk railroad. All right, I'll read what it says. Improved cars and engines moved to opposite side of pond. Each load from 1,000 to 1,500 feet log scale. One rider operated 2 cars as seen in this picture. The latest model of cars used, the rider was up on a raised platform so he could see over the log loads traveling ahead of him. Wrecks occurred rather frequently, but no operators were killed in the 10 years operating. Note the lumber flume, which delivered sawn lumber from a small portable mill operated up the Deer Creek fork of the Sproule Creek for a few years in the spring. Of course, as Mr. Lambert said, they could only operate when they had enough water.
You didn't get any coffee, did you?
Yes, I did.
For yourself?
Yep. Have it right here. Okay, here's the P&J Railroad again, push, pull, and jerk. 1.5 miles long, operated by gravity, engine to haul cars back, braked by steel shod cross frame behind back shell, pressure applied by lever, operated by rider, raising load weight onto what? Onto beams. These are all Tagum pictures and not Sproule Creek. Alright, here's some of the men. Oh no, we'll go back, no, we'll go some of the men by the log buildings and by the railroad. Logging railroad. Operated by horses. A.G. Lambert Company Limited log camp 3 miles up Sproule Creek. 1912 to 1915. Foreman, Jazz Frame on the roof.
James Frank.
James, okay. Cook and waitress, Mr. and Mrs. William Baxter on the roof and ladder. A.G. Lambert at far left. Railroad engineer Ellis McClintock, there his name is.
There it is.
Teamster George Oliver from Grey Creek. And it says single horse. Cook Gauss left, cookhouse left, bunkhouse right, woodshed in the middle. Teamster Robert Elliott, the white team. Okay, here's some of the men. This is 1910. Crew at first sawmill 1.5 miles up Sproule Creek from Tagum, BC, taken in front of the cookhouse. Woods foreman James Frame, second row center. Engineer Matt Gibbs, second from right, first row. And Joe Dumont, Tom Pretty, and somebody Manhart are also in the picture. Good picture by Watts Brothers. And another one was men. A.G. Lambert Company, same crew at the log camp, taking it downstream side of bunkhouse. A.G. Lambert, extreme right back row. James Sprain, fourth from right back row. George Oliver, second from left front row. Robert Elliott Teamster, second row right with white horses. Another Watts Brothers photograph. And this is Alice McClintock with the leather hat. And the last one of these girls.
That's the first mill.
Yeah. First mill at Sproule Creek, 1.5 miles from Tag. Built by John Bell, that was the partner, in 1905. Capacity 20 million?
No, 20,000.
20,000 feet per day, 10 hours per 10-hour day. Operated until 1917, when the new mill was built at 5 miles up from Tag. Okay, and then there's 2 or 3 small faded pictures of Nelson. There's an early waterfront picture, hard to see. Smelter. Burned by the firebug, 1911. And 1903 or 4 waterfront picture, which we have. Okay, great.
I didn't realize you would get that. It's a good thing I marked on.
In the back. And there's the Kootenai Engineering Works down on the waterfront, which was also burned by the fireworks. And through tar.
That's a good picture of it you got.
Yeah. Okay.
That's the most.
Yeah, that's great. I just thought we should get them on there.
That's a good
Oh.
idea.
Never mind.